that has learned even one of the forms have done these foundation movements. And this is really derived from Kuen, when we salute. Okay. And then if we pivot like this, like in the first form, and this would be our 5-stance drill. Okay. So we have lots of movements here that teach us some of the transitions in the form. So if you haven't learned this, you might follow this to realize what's inside those set of movements. So you have Chunkyeo, which is really, when we're practicing sequence, it's just about memorizing. When you practice execution, it's all about body alignment, position, stance work, body integration, position to set up before your next move, shifting of weight, dropping your hand to this position, back fist to the face, turning, find your center. You have to look at the body form and position to know that when we move, there's interim positions that you have to set up, execute, set up, execute. And then as the movements become more and more refined, that's where you start to blend. Now, when you learn form, there's a final position. That's our postures. Okay, accuracy of that position is important. And a transition. So when we're here, and we're here, 1, 2, 3, the phase of movements when you're going from here to here to here to here to here to here, it's like taking a video and then chopping it up, taking out the increments or the different, depends on how many frames per second you have. You have to pick the frames that you need to create that quantity of movement. So it's not random movement and it's not excessive. Last class I've been talking more about proportion of movement and reference points. You reference your body because that's what you're dealing with. If you're looking at a martial art, what's the total, or what is the reason to practice it? Because first, it is a form of self-defense, whether it's offensive or defense. So that's what most people know as Kung Fu. And then there's the aesthetics of it, which becomes more of a performance skill. Then taking the performance skill to a competitive skill is another thing. One's a sport, one's artistic, one's more martial. And then tie it all together, there's philosophy, there's science, there's all of these things that are different tiers of martial arts training that leads us into a deeper understanding. So, why does someone like myself who spend, many, many decades studying this stuff, is it because I want to memorize the form a little better than I memorized it the first time? It's not that. It's because you're training or developing the body mechanics and taking your body through this journey of discovering what it's capable of doing. We really don't understand that until we get to that point. And so it's really interesting. For me, I find, the benefit not only on a physical level, the mental understanding and the interpretation of not the physical movement, but the mental aspect of creating a level of thinking that's even beyond what you would expect, just learning the physical form. Because you really do build intelligence in the brain from the intelligence in the body. That's something that even the researchers do today to think about. I call it's the physical side of learning. You learn through your movements to interpret and analyze and develop that skill. Because analytical skill, regardless of your analyzing something on something that's within the realm of your expertise or analyzing something on the realm of my expertise, it's the same process. So that's why, when you're an adult, you learn it for a specific reason. When you're a child learning it, it actually will make you a smarter kid because it does help a child think in a different way and then build this body coordination that really builds really the sequence of thought. Really, that's really what's important, because that becomes organizational skill. So when we're doing a form, we're developing a tremendous amount of organizational skill. So that's just the first movement in the form. But when you first learn it, 1, 2, 3, you don't have anything built into the movement because it doesn't know how to actually translate the body form into, a performance skill or a technique. So when you draw, you want intensity. So that's really how your body. So your body is not just doing this. That's an isolated movement, has no structure, has no direction movement. When you draw a movement, it has to tie, the body has to expand. Boom. The hand has to go out. And you have to settle in your stance. That's really what you're building as a feeling and experience and space. So that's simply chunkyo, right? Here, scoop. When your hand goes down, it's covering. When you go like this, it becomes move. So you look at direction. When I go like this, there's a 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 direction. There's so many facets to that single movement that your body has to capture that imagery and then express it in a way that it becomes, you can recognize it, recognizable. You can feel it, experience it, and see it, and then it kind of defines what that movement is going to be. Everybody can see a punch, and that's what your goal is. When you do a movement like this, you don't actually know exactly why you're doing it. When you're like this, and you go like this, and you go like this, those are 2 blocks. Why the elbows are out? Because that's the direction of. You can't do it like this. There's no strength there. So there's structure, there's body mechanics, and then there's position. So this is what we're doing. When you come up and you come out and you come out like this movement is flaring out, opening your chest. The muscle here contracts and you open up. So what is this doing? Why am I posing or am I just letting someone avoiding? It senses all of that. You're turning here to here to here and here. So the wrist, when it's bent like this, or like this, or like this, becomes a hook or a capture. When you're here and you intercept, you're deflecting. So this is like an upper shoulder level cutting hand. You're cutting to the back. So you're separating from here. But then when you push back, you have to drop your elbows. So we have to sink the elbow and relax the shoulder. It's a term I use a lot. It's in Tai Chi. It's in actually every Kung Fu. Sink the elbow means to drop. Sink your bridge. Your bridge. So when you thrust, sink, that's sinking your bridge. So a bridge is connecting. So in here, boom, that's a sink. You can create a force, or you can create the softness in the movement to create a redirectional force. So when you sink, becomes a connection, an integration of movement. So you have to combine the motion to create the softness within the motion, and that's where the softness can overcome the hardness, or soft overcoming hard. Because when you're here, sink, turn, redirect, sink, and turn. Those are just how we maneuver when we're doing some of the movements in the form that appear to be much more graceful than just rigid movement. This is really not the kind of force you should be developing. Forms are to teach you how to use your strength. Learning to use your strength is really the ultimate goal in any of the things that we're doing, because our body has no perception or intelligence about what it's trying to do until you teach it. So learning to use your strength, and I just throw this out at you, what is learning how to use your strength? How much strength do you need? Well, when it comes to movement that's not tangible, you don't really know how much strength you're using because you're not using it against anything. Now, tangible strength, you know it takes this much force to push it over there, this much force to do it. So with tangible strength, say you're doing a curl with 25 pounds, you know that you need 25 pounds of muscular force to lift that. You can use more than 25 pounds to lift that, but eventually you'll realize that you only need just enough to move that weight. So then it becomes a balance. If you use more than that, you're going to clock yourself in the head with the weight because you did it too much strength. If you don't use enough, it doesn't move. But when you're using it against a technique, you really don't know how much strength you need until you experience it. So when you do a technique like this and you block, boom, that's your position. How much strength does it take to block it? Not more than that. Why? Because all you do is have to attach. And then you respond based on the next line of motion. So you don't need to overreact. That's one big mistake. When you use it, all you have to do is do this. All you have to do is this. All you have to do is this. That actually already creates the connection between you and that source. So that's developed and understand why when you do your form, it has to be soft in one sense, but your body has to create it. So you use a focus there, and you have to get it there fast enough. But once you get it there, boom, it's gone. No strength. Doesn't have to be. This is the innate strength, the latent energy in the movement. You don't need tension here. Only execute and finish. It's there. You don't need any strength until your next motion. So in other words, if I go like this, it's here, then it's here. So every time you change your direction of movement, becomes sort of the softness of that movement. That's passive motion. Passive motion builds into active motion. Active becomes passive and active. So it's a cycle. It's really the balance between yin and yang. So if you understand the idea that I'm talking about, then when you practice your forms, then you begin to realize why you don't have to use a lot of strength in every position. However, if you're in a position like this, you're developing a motor skill and a musculature to find your final position. But if you're doing this and your shoulders are out of position, you don't have the natural position and execute by creating this. So this is like this, or I can create that. Right? So if I have this position as a foundation position, and I'm here in a soft position, then if I want to move it, the hand comes like that. That creates the line of force. So that's how you feel like, oh, when you connect with someone's bridge and it goes boom, and then it feels like your arm bounced away. It's that sudden motion that becomes part of the execution that you developed here. Then when you're here, like a praying movement, you spread. You're spreading the hands out. Then you create the next position. Here's the hook wrist. That's pulling, right? You're like this. And then you're pushing. So don't look at just this as the direction of force. There's a direction of force. This is sinking the elbow, relaxing the shoulder. So within a phase of movement, you sink and pull as two directional forces created in a single motion. So when we're practicing this, we're trying to understand what is going on in relationship to the body and how the body will start to compensate for that. So at the same time, you're in here, then we have to do this, right? And then we have to pull down. So when we do this, just like we lift, the back lifts, sink to the back, you can feel the strength in the back and the upper body, and then your torso should hit. But you don't tuck the hip under like this. This is a mistake. You should actually sit in the stance and not tuck, but just keep the concentration in the lower abdomen. So when you do this, you're rounding. Not quite the same as doing like a crunch, but not quite the same rigidity that you have doing a bunch of sit-ups. Because when you pull down, and you pull down, now your body, if it's in a different form, is going to work your body so that it moves one side at a time. So that actually is different from doing some of the things that people train in, like doing a lot of sit-ups and planking. Those actually will create too much stiffness in your body. So when you pull down like this and you push, then here, this is your wrist block, right? That's your sink your bridge, relax the shoulder, and thrust. So in order to sink, thrust is power. But when you sink, you can sink and relax. So this actually allows us to begin to integrate the body as it learns to settle. And that's settling, because we're going downward, can be softer than you thrust. Now if this is full hug, we're here. In Gung Kuen, we're like this, cross. So the hands come in, come out, come in, come out, cover, and open. So see these hand positions. Those are fundamentals. Get those down so that you know the precise position of this, and this, this, and this. Okay? So you can see this, this, this. They're exactly the same. You replicate the position. So you have this here, then you have this here. So that's why in Fook Fu, when you go from here to there, your body form and position's already been muscle memory. It knows the strength and position. So this position of structure is a natural strength. Execution would vary in intensity depending on what or how much force you need to deal with the position of the technique coming into you. So if I go like this, boom. If I use it to just intercept, or I use it to strike. Okay. So if a punch comes here, boom, that's what you're doing. You're striking like this, but you're also settling here, because when your ribs are like this, your body is open. When you go like this, your body is closed. So you want your ribs to respond as part of that motion. So, advanced, intermediate training is really about the body mechanics and how much you can build into your technique. So in the body form, when we're doing this, when we're here, this is just building a sequential event. How much intensity you have really depends on your purpose. But when we're doing a form, what we need in intensity is the accuracy, the position, and the fact that our body is adapting to the motion. Okay, so we shift and we step, and we're like this. You see, I didn't just step. There's no lower body here. When I shift and I step, I sink in this leg, so I have stability to draw this. You see? So you should not do this. You just draw. This is your position of stability, because when I stepped, I'm down here. Now I'm ready to do this. And then when I do this, it's your block. Now you don't have to go way over here. It's actually right here. And then you kick, sliding step, and then if you trap, you roll. And then open. You see that? 1, 2, 3, 4. My foot should be coming in. You see, watch my foot. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going that way. So if I'm on this line, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not how it should be going. You should be here. You see the line of my heel. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Toe, toe. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So you see how that line, that footwork actually is important, because you're working the pivoting. So when you get to here and you come up, the strategy and the hip position is measured. It teaches your pivoting how much it needs to pivot. So that's actually a very important thing for your hips, and then for your footwork it's very important because of the action you need to go from the horse to here to here. So all of this is really learning to pivot. When you get to the iron wire form, a lot of that kind of stuff happens in the footwork. A lot of people don't have good footwork there because they don't have control of the lower extremity. So everything is all tense up here, but there's no lower body positioning. So once you finish your Gung Kuen or Footwork, focus on your footwork. Focus on body positioning and form because you have all of those built into that. No sequence is so long and so complex in many ways that you have to spend a bit of time on each section, working it to develop a better understanding of the movements. And as we go through the process, you pick up on little things. A lot of it is just verbal transmission. Just the audio side of the teaching. So watching video is great, but if there's no communication between the dialogue of what we're doing and what the theory is or the principle or concept, then it leaves you guessing. And that guessing doesn't get answers. So you practice and you practice and you practice. But the answer that you eventually will get is only from what your mind is echoing, telling you that's what I think it should be. But there's nothing more reinforcing than a teacher that tells you that this is what you should be striving for. Then you take that information, correlate to what you thought it should be, and you see if it works. See if it makes sense and you're thinking on the same wavelength. But if one's like his and one like that, then you say, one of us has to be right. So you're going to say, well, okay, maybe I have to rethink it. Or, well, that person is totally wrong, and I'm going to continue to do it my way. So the thing is, it's the mind interaction, so the mind-body side of it is understanding based on your level of interpretation. So that's really kind of what you have to get from this particular class is that, we have to have an open mind. You have to listen, and you have to understand based on what your body is telling you that's right or wrong at this point. So that's going to constantly evolve. Too many people are set in their way. So this is what I heard. This is the only way I'm going to do it. But is it the right way? Because everything is subject to interpretation. So sometimes things are lost in translation. Not necessarily a language translation. Translation in the language of the art. So that's something that we have to kind of think about and begin to understand that. So, the ideas that we have, the basic things that we just talked about, cover. When your hands are like this, and I turn like this, that's really a position, right? When we're here and roll the shoulders, the cupping of the shoulders completes our circle. When I adjust like this, the cupping of the shoulder creates the trapping hand. Okay. The elbow that we have here in the second form is the same elbow that we have here. That's a turn. The second elbow, the shoulder stroke, is this. So this position, this should be on the soft part of your waist, and this should be the triangle. It's a shoulder stroke. So when you elbow and you drop and you turn, the purpose of the turn and the drop is because when you elbow, if I grab the arm or whatever, I would have to connect this side with this. So this is a shoulder stroke. So if you captured an arm coming, folding, and then it comes like this elbow becomes this. And then once my hand is here, if I do this, then that's where that hand comes down. So you see, the form is really made up of positions and postures. When you take those postures and link them together, it builds a transition. That transition becomes a technique that's applicable, but at the same time, it has a method to it. So don't look at application literally, completely in, what you see as a single posture. Because many of those transitions don't work until you bridge those movements and combine them together. It's like big and lao, or big and cover and big. Those actually have to work together in order to be effective. But your body has to go through enough processing for it to know the correct structure, the skeletal structure, and positioning. So every movement, fortunately, is somewhat defined. The big is a vertical elbow. The pow is a horizontal elbow. So I use vertical and horizontal as a guideline for, where your arm should be, and that's typically what it is. And then the rest of it, as far as direction, could be obliques, slants. So those are slanted, square movements, triangles, and circles. So when you teach along those lines, and that's, most of, how I teach, using the geometry position and all those reference points, that gives you something to work off mindfully so you can develop accuracy of motion. And ultimately, that's your goal. So on that note, I think, let's see, how much more time we have? Another few minutes? 3 minutes. So if you have any questions, as we move forward, I said earlier that, we're probably going to be at some point opening up the classes again. We'll probably work on a soft opening and maybe scale down some of the classes that we have, because we don't know how many people are going to come back right away. Part of it is because of the social distancing, and part of it is because people just are not comfortable. But once we open up, and I need to open up because we have a big space here, and we need to come back here and work out in the space, get through some of the classes. The streaming will continue. We just have to juggle the times between what happens there and what happens within the streaming. But definitely we have a very good following from people all over the globe, and we want to keep that going because the styles that I teach, we don't want those to disappear. We don't want them to go away, and the only way we can keep those alive is to have people do it, and to have people get engaged with it and appreciate the thoughts and the insights that are built inside the traditional arts. And traditional arts is something that I believe in because it's what I've done all of my life. So with that said, there's a lot to learn and there's a lot to digest. And the only way to get any of that is to spend time. It's a function of time. So the more you know, the more you do, really will evolve. And more is not only volume, but it's actually understanding. So the deeper your understanding, the better it would be. But for teachers especially, heighten your level of understanding so that when you teach, you can get that same message across, because that's really what's important. If you don't have enough depth of knowledge, you're really not giving the student the justice. So continue to train, understand what you're learning, so that when you translate that information, you're going to give the correct information, and that's what's important. And for us, we struggle with it all the time, but we try to get that message across. So with that said, thumbs up, YouTube, subscribe, get as many people as you know that's interested in it. It could be your friends, it could be students. Give them the experience. That's all we can do. That's what I'm doing, is giving you the experience. And if I opened up some eyes or even some hearts, then actually that's the objective, and actually we appreciate it. All right, see you next time.